Good afternoon, good evening to viewers wherever you are. Many of you, or many of us, in some form of lockdown. But instead of feeling like we are in a prison, let's look at this as an opportunity to learn about nature, about mangroves, and even about their connection to quarantine that we are experiencing now. First, let's look at the habitats. From the sea, we have coral reefs to seagrasses to mangroves. In celebration of May as the month of the oceans, I would like to stress the importance of protecting our coastal and marine habitats. And this poster from CSL of an ideal MPA or marine protected area shows the no-take zone, the buffer zone, the regulated use zone, just to give you a quick idea of coastal protection. So mangroves are mostly trees, but also shrubs that are intertidal between the high tide and the low tide. They are located and found in the tropics and subtropics. The darkened lines here of Central and South America, Western and Eastern Africa, and South and Southeast Asia, covering 14 to 15 million hectares in about 120 countries and territories. In terms of height, the tallest mangroves are found in Ecuador. A Rhizophora mangle measured at 63 meters. And this would be the height of a 2-meter person standing behind the tree. And that's right in the tropics here. That's Ecuador in Central America. And the shortest would be in Mozambique, a 2-meter tall mangrove, mature already, right here. And even shorter, a 1-meter tall Avicennia marina in Australia, which is even lower in latitude and colder. So the habitat of mangroves is quite extreme and they have to cope. So their mechanisms include salt glands that produce salt here on the leaves because the salt water cannot enter the bodies or the tissues of mangroves. They will die. They have to expel the salt through the salt glands or through mass falling of leaves. And also mangroves are surrounded by water, so they have specialized roots for support, like here and here, and also breathing structures called lenticels, these circles to the left. Thirdly, they have viviparous seeds. Viviparous meaning, for example, we humans are viviparous. We have babies, but chickens are oviparous. They lay eggs. So likewise, mangroves, their propagules are already baby mangroves that we see here. So that when they fall to the ground, like Aegiceras here, in a few days, the roots go down, the shoots go up, and you have a baby mangrove for survival purposes. No time wasted in germination. And also, they need to conserve water because of the extremely dry environment through a waxy cuticle or succulent leaves. So we mentioned mangrove roots. We can have prop roots that we saw earlier or stilt roots, buttress roots, pneumatophores. Please note the English language is not very useful. They have letters that are not used. So it starts with the letter P, but you say pneumatophores. And knee roots, which look like a bended knee. So we have a variety of roots for mangroves. Back to the pneumatophores of Pagatpat is a local name and Piapi, another local name. The scientific names are there. If we take a cut of the tissue of the roots, a very thin cut, and put it on a slide under the microscope, you see spaces. Under higher magnification, these are air spaces that hold gases, for example, carbon dioxide. So that even if the tree is underwater during the day, it is able to produce food through photosynthesis using the energy of sunlight. Photosynthesis is to make food with the help of chlorophyll in their leaves and carbon dioxide in the air spaces. This image just shows that trees do not really die, no? They just grow and grow. And this is one pneumatophore of a mangrove, a very old mangrove. So unlike animals, we have to carry our weight, so our size is limited, but plants have no such limitation as they just stand still. In terms of geography, we have mangroves in lagoons, in estuaries, in deltas. And in terms of species, this is from Singapore, but the species are quite similar. Rhizophora, Sonaratia, and all of these. PDF files are available of this, by the way, from Dr. Young. Now, species diversity, depending on the author, some go up to 60 species of mangroves because they include mangrove associates, no? But anyway, if we look at this graph, the Philippines is among the most diverse with 36 to 46 species, so that in the Indo-Pacific, more than 50% of mangrove species are found. And GSL has a field guide to these mangroves, very useful in the field, based on this book that was printed in 2004. It's now out of print. But if you take a page of the book, you see photos of leaves, flowers, and fruits, and the measurements of these different plant parts, and the months of the year when the fruits and the flowers can be found. And also, the top, you find the scientific or Latin name or binomial name, which consists of the genus Bruguiera. If you have many of them, they are called genera. That's the plural. And the species name or the species epithet, if only one species, there is no such thing as species. And if many of them, still species. Also note that the genus is capitalized, but the species epithet is all in small letters. And the whole name is italicized because it is in a foreign language, in Latin or Latinized. So, this was the work that we did to write that handbook in 2004. We would measure to midnight or later. So sometimes we got bored and played around with the propagules, pretending they were pens or cigars. But these samples, we collected the whole day. So after one day, we would have 2 to 3 big garbage bags of these specimens. So if you look here, lower left, for each part, each leaf, for example, we will need 10 samples and 5 plants at 3 sites. So that by itself is already 150 samples. You multiply that by 35 species, that's 5,250 samples. You multiply that by maybe 4 or 5 plant parts that we measured, so that's 20,000. But actually, maybe we measured close to 3,000 or 4,000, which is still really a lot for that book. So we come to the 3 sisters of the mangroves: Avicennia marina, Sonaratia alba, and Rhizophora. The leaves look similar, but it is in the roots, as we showed earlier, that you have the variety, and the fruits as well, that you can differentiate them. Start with Rhizophora. There are 3 species in the Philippines: Apiculata, Mucronata, stylosa, and a 4th is a hybrid, the marquis, which has no fruits because it is sterile. It has flowers, but these are sterile. Some of the bigger rhizophora, and this is in a plantation to the right, and these are antique chairs, Spanish times, made of rhizophora. The wood is perfect for furniture. It's dense and it is insect proof because of the salt exposure. The most or maybe only sustainable plantation of mangroves that I know is the 45,000 hectares in Matang, Malaysia, where the trees are cut every 15 to 30 years and replaced. After cutting, they put new seedlings. We come to the genus Avicennia, 4 species in the Philippines. Again, the leaves look similar, but the flowers and fruits have differences, and even the leaves are different. And this is where the connection comes in between mangroves and quarantine. Quarantine is a 40-day isolation method to avoid leprosy. For example, in the Islamic world, that was 1,000 years ago, no? This was an epidemic. Later, it was adopted in Europe because there were many epidemics, the Black Death, Spanish flu, and so this was a very useful method adopted in Europe and called quarantena by the Venetians, meaning 40 days. The original name in Arabic was al-arba'iniya. But this method was so successful, it has come to us today in the English term of quarantine from quarantena, meaning 40 days, regardless of the duration. At present, 2 weeks, 10 days, but the concept of quarantine has come to us from this great scientist, Ibn Sina. He was one who developed this method, a Persian physician better known as Avicenna, the Latinized name. So Linnaeus, the taxonomist, named the mangrove, the dominant mangrove genus Avicennia, in honor of Avicenna or Ibn Sina. And we can see that there are many chemicals found in mangroves, which would be the basis of medicinal uses. Here we have, I cannot read because it's covered by something, PFAS, gibberellins, and so mangroves are used as pesticides, herbicides for cancer, diarrhea, all kinds of medicinal uses. And in fact, mangrove pharmacology was well developed in the golden age of Islam. Oh, it won't go down. Okay. This is Ibn Sina, best known as a physician and even called the father of early modern medicine. His life was devoted the film in 2013, The Physician, up to my final. He argued that a 40-day quarantine period would weaken the spread of contagious diseases in his Canon of Medicine, published in 1025. So the method of quarantine has been with us for 1,000 years now. We are now in 2020. This is the Canon of Medicine. Until today, it has become the cornerstone of modern medicine. The global medical community used it as a lecture book for almost 600 years. And it was taught as the medical text in both the Islamic world and Europe. So to the left, this is actually an Irish book in 1500, but inserted in the binding of the book, they found 2 sheets of translations of 2 pages from the Canon of Medicine into Irish. So you see, in 1025, we had this Arabic medical book that was translated into Irish, Spanish, English, and everywhere that they taught medicine. So Arabic medicine came first before Western medicine. The second masterpiece of Ibn Sina was the Book of Healing, considered to be the largest encyclopedia written by only one man. So with his expertise in medicine, astronomy, math, theology, Ibn Sina may be considered the most significant philosopher in the Islamic tradition and has been named the prince and chief of physicians, the Aristotle of Arabs, and if I may add, when Iraq was attacked, you know, by the US because of weapons of mass destruction, not only people died, but the museums that had all these writings and all the artifacts of the golden age of Islam, those were all lost. A huge collateral damage of that war and a loss to Homo sapiens, to humans everywhere. Back to Avicennia rumphiana, a second species. This is considered the biggest tree, not only in the Philippines, but probably Asia. 3 meters diameter, 9 meters circumference. Another species, Avicennia officinalis, the one with the salt that I showed earlier. These are trainees that we have. We're supposed to have the 12th and 13th session this year, except for COVID. So we've had 11 sessions of this trainers training on mangroves. Next, we have Sonaratia, 3 species in the Philippines, different flowers and fruits. The most common is Sonaratia alba, the first mangrove to land way back in 2009 on the front page of a Filipino newspaper. And this is from one of our sites in Iloilo. You see this tree has been cut, many broken branches, but it was protected and so it recovered. This is what we mean when we say mangroves are resilient. In contrast, the same species never experienced the blade from humans. So you see how beautiful it is. But anyway, I'd like to point out this is my cousin and me in 2005. And she told me that her mother used to visit that forest 50 years ago. So she showed me a photo of her mother 50 years ago and the Sonaratia tree. So that's the growth of Sonaratia in 50 years. Very fast growing. An endangered species is Camptostemon philippinensis, locally known as gapas-gapas because the flowers become fruits, and when the fruits burst, they release threads that look like cotton. That is gapas in Malay. Gapas-gapas. Another name for cotton in the Philippines is algodon, but that comes from Spanish. Then we have Lumnicera racemosa, has white flowers. Liturea has red flowers. So the hybrid would have been rosea. And Lumnicera rosea was first described in 1827 by a French scientist from Manila, but now can no longer be seen in the whole of the Philippines. It can be found only in Australia and in Vietnam so far. So looking at all these references, I counted 42 mangrove species in the Philippines, but 2 have not been seen. Schultze and this one. So -2 is 40, but 4 hybrids have not been seen. These underlined in red, including rosea. So 40 minus 4 equals 36. So I stick to 36 total mangrove species in the Philippines. Starting with this species after which Manila Bay was named, because the local name is Nilad or Nilar. So the Tagalogs refer to the place as May Nilad. There is Nilad or Siphiphora hydrophyllacea. Many places named after mangroves all over the country show that mangroves were very abundant and very diverse a long time ago in the Philippines. Another species is Seriopstagal. The bark is scraped, dried, boiled, and powder is removed. This is called tumog or baluk. So it is a retardant because if you get the sap, this is a coconut, no? You get the coconut sap, you can drink it immediately. It's very nice, very sweet like this. But if you want to keep it for some time, then you have to add something, a retardant to kill the germs, and that is the baluk or the tungog. So in Mindanao and Visayas in the south, mangroves are referred to as katungan, the place where there is tungog, the most valuable product from the mangroves. Whereas in Luzon, they call mangroves bakawan after their more dominant Rhizophora species. Let's look at why tungog or Seriopstagal disappeared based on this paper in 2000 that I wrote in the Philippine Quarterly of Culture and Society with De La Peña. Sites for collection were in Pulilio, Luzon, Mindoro, and especially Palawan, even down to Mindanao, and even down to Borneo. Okay? The sailboats that collected came from Bohol, Pagangan Island in Calape. About 100 sailboats. The biggest of them would have 15-meter masts, something similar to this, but bigger. And each trip would last 4 to 5 months, but to Borneo longer. And one boat with a crew of 20 would pack 60 sacks of corn, 1 sack of mungo, 2 sugar, 1 salt, and water. And the largest boat could load 6,000 kilograms of bark, like what we see to the left here when they came back. So on their return trip, after 4 to 5, oh yes, first of all, this is why Seriopstagal has been decimated, no? Because imagine 100 sailboats carrying 6,000, let's say 4,000 kilos of bark on the way back. That's how many sacks. That's 10,000 or less sacks for all that. So that will wipe out the Seriopstagal in the whole country. Anyway, on the way back, they would be peddled. The bark would be peddled in markets for sale to bahalina makers. So this is tuba, the usual coconut toddy that is drunk immediately. But if you want to make it more delicious or nutritious, you keep it for 3 months in clay pots or banga and in demijohns or damajuana. Supposed to be nutritious for older people and older ladies. But mostly they were sold in Cebu wholesale to Chinese buyers who would make them into a powder that was sold. And then also we get dyes, not only for drinks, but for cloth from mangroves. This is from Bruguera and Rhizophora in Indonesia. Batik, very beautiful but very expensive, $50 to $100 per piece. And we also have drinks from mangroves. This is Sonaratia casularis, the fruits here on the tree and the drink. The People's Organization, the Small Fishers of Lanka, commercialized the drink based on a scientific paper. These are scientists, I know them, Taduguebas, a paper they published in 2006 on the nutritional characters of the fruits, of the mangrove apple fruits. And sister species, Sonaratia ovata, which is a favorite in the Philippines by children because it's much bigger. Nipa is a mangrove species, the only monocot mangrove species. So you get the sap, and you can turn it into vinegar after fermentation or into wine by cooking or distilling. This is a distillery, and the product is called laksoy. It's 35% alcohol. This was a group in 2006 for their immersion. But this year, another student group from a university in Butuan went to this place to produce more alcohol. From 35%, they increase it to 70%, which is the requirement for medical use of alcohol for distribution in my home province of Agusan in Caraga. Nipa, the most important product actually in the rural areas is the leaves, are the leaflets made into shingles, no, for shelter. Very basic requirement of rural Philippines. But in an old paper, I read that nipa was also made into raincoats. So I found a photo. Of course, not this is not the same palm, but I would imagine nipa raincoat would be similar to this. And please, Filipinos, do not laugh because this may be your great, 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 great grandfather. These are Filipinos of long ago. Nipa fruits can also be cooked, no, into a dessert. Mangroves have many uses, okay, livelihoods, and they provide shelter as a house, food as a kitchen, medicine as a pharmacy, and protection as a fence. So food here, we have vegetables, flavoring, seasoning, and fodder. Fodder or forage. In the Middle East, the camels go down to the sea for Avicennia marina when there are no more leaves in upland. And the cows go down in Cebu and in Sri Lanka. And this is a mangrove tree in Cebu, Pagapat, same as this. But you might ask, why so big and here why so short? Because here, the local people, they harvest the leaves and feed to their cows and their goats. Because as we can see here, this is actually a goat trying to catch, trying to get at the leaves because they are delicious to the goats. This was in Iloilo. And I've seen this also in Palawan. They just love leaves of mangroves. So we see here the different uses of mangroves. In the next episode, we'll take care of coastal protection. In terms of valuation, this is a 2011 paper. There are many papers, by the way. This one just gives a total of $14,000 to $16,000 per hectare value. So they are very valuable, no? Very high value, the goods and services. Now we look at the animals in mangroves. Permanent residents that do not move away. These are fish like mudskippers and shellfish. Here, they just remain in mangroves. Shells, univalves or gastropods. In this paper, they occupy different layers of the trees and even on the substrate. And in Cebu, this was the harvest of one gleaner, many species of bivalves this time, but the most expensive here is imbaw, Anodontia philippiana, because it gives very good soup and it can even be eaten raw as kinilaw. And usually gleaners are women and children. They go during low tide, no, to the intertidal area. So it is represents food security for rural Filipinos. And if there's some extra, they sell in the market for cash. Another shellfish is the shipworm, so-called because they attack ships. They're found on ships. Teredo, locally called tamilok. But a delicacy that can cost up to 500 pesos per kilo. And these teachers asked me, how does it taste? And of course, it's delicious like oysters because this is a mollusk. It is not a worm. It is a mollusk like oysters, except it has no shell. And the crabs, of course. The mangrove crab, there are 4 species in the Philippines. The biggest is Sila serrata, which can go up to 1 to 2 kilos heavy. But more familiar are the fiddler crabs, so-called because the males have an enlarged and attractive claw for fighting other males. and also for courting females, for attracting females. So it's called a fiddle, meaning like a violin. When they wave this claw, it looks like a fiddle or a violin. And these figures just show the burrows because we see them up, but they have homes, no? Below the substrate like this and like this. Another is the mud skipper, a fish that lives in the mud. And those of us from the south who know Cebuano are familiar with this folk song na masul sa kadagatan, nakakuha og isdang tambasakan, but there is something wrong here because your mud skippers are not caught in the offshore. Kadagatan is the littoral zone. You do not go there to catch your mud skippers. So this should be changed to namasul sa katungan. You go to the mangroves to catch your. So folk people also sometimes do not know their ecology. Okay. Now we come to other animals. Many of them live below the surface. They're called in fauna. So birds above that feed on these animals deep in the substrate have long bills. But other food items are on the surface. They're called epifauna. So the bills of birds do not have to be as long. Then we have birds and monkeys and tigers and in mangroves. The biggest population of tigers and the biggest tigers are found in the Sundarbans in Bangladesh and India. And then we have the transients, those that live in mangroves just temporarily as juveniles. This was my PhD thesis actually, showing what does a shrimp do. And just to not, aside from swimming and feeding, they use shelter in the mangroves among the roots here. Okay. And we see this graph, scientists among us showing the correlation between mangrove area on the x-axis and catches of fish and shrimp on the y-axis. It is a positive correlation, but just a correlation. The causal connection, the causality is because the mangroves provide food and or shelter. And we see this also for fish here. This is from the Americas, no? Fish and the life cycle. Because if you are a juvenile, a young shrimp, low tide, you are found here. But high tide, when the tide goes into the mangroves, you go in to feed. The big fish that are your predators cannot follow you. So we made a poster of the life cycle of Pineus monodon, going as juveniles into the mangroves. And when they go back to the sea, they are caught by here. This is a baby trawler in Negros. This is the catch from the trawler, and the shrimp are selected. So one of the shrimp would be the giant tiger prawn. Giant because it goes up to 400, 500 kilograms, not kilograms, grams, as big as the arm of a man. But if we look at the giant grouper, this is 400 kilograms. No, you can see the difference. And just very quickly to say that it's all because of anatomy. The fish has a vertebral column for support, and the shrimp, the prawns, do not. That's why they are called invertebrates. From the internet, I got this photo thinking that we don't have them in the Philippines, but in 2015-16, many reports of the giant grouper from Antique. So this is the last part, our materials, information materials. We have posters, PDF files are available for this. And also, I had a project for mangrove modules, information materials for elementary, primary, and secondary high school grades, written by a group of teachers over 2-3 years. If you're interested, you can write me. And finally, second to the last slide, when you go to the mangroves, footwear is very essential. Booties and even socks, but please do not wear wedges, or sandals that are easily. But the best that I saw really was from a National Geographic cameraman who needed his hands for his cameras. So he had state-of-the-art boots with plastic loops for his water. So, very last, when you go to the mangroves or to the field for that matter, take nothing but pictures, except if you have a permit to take specimens. Leave nothing but your footprints. Do not leave garbage. And kill nothing but time. Thank you.